A friend of mine from college, Chloe, she's always been responsible, always thinking ahead. So, right after freshman year, she landed what she thought was the absolute perfect summer job, house sitting for a wealthy family. The Hendersons, who were off on a grand tour of Europe for 6 weeks. The house was incredible. One of those hyper modern minimalist mansions made of glass and steel, tucked away in a very affluent, very sparsely populated, and very wooded suburb in Fairfield County, Connecticut. You know the type of neighborhood, massive, multi acre properties, long, winding private driveways, houses set so far apart you can't even see your nearest neighbor through the thick old growth trees. The Hendersons told her the job was laughably easy. Just water the extensive collection of indoor plants, collect the mail, and enjoy the pool and a state-of-the-art home theater system. They also mentioned almost as an afterthought as they were leaving that the equally massive, equally isolated property next door was currently vacant and for sale. So she shouldn't be alarmed if she never saw any lights or activity over there. Absolute peace and quiet, they'd promised. The first week was idyllic, a dream come true for a broke college student. Chloe felt like she'd won the lottery. She'd swim in the infinity pool, read on the huge mahogany deck, and enjoy the profound peace and quiet of the woods. But then the neighbor, a man she only knew as Mr. Abernathy from the name on his mailbox at the end of the long shared driveway, started making his presence known. It began with a simple wave if he happened to be out in his yard and saw her by the pool, friendly enough. Then, a day or two later, he left a small wicker basket of freshly picked vegetables from his impressive garden on her front doorstep with a neatly handwritten note. A welcome to the neighborhood for the summer. Hope you enjoy. Sweet, she thought, a little old-fashioned, but sweet. But his friendliness started to become persistent and insistent. He'd coincidentally be out doing yard work, trimming his hedges or raking leaves every single time she went for a walk down the long driveway to get the mail. His small talk started to feel less like friendly, neighborly chat and more like a gentle, probing interview. He asked about her major, her family back home, her circle of friends, if she had a boyfriend, what her plans were after college. He seemed to have an insatiable curiosity about her life, but shared almost nothing about his own. He also seemed to know when she was alone in the house. His coincidental appearances became much more frequent, and his conversations more prolonged on the days when her local friends who visited for the afternoon had left. The sprawling glass-walled house, which had at first felt liberating and luxurious, now started to feel like a fishbowl, a terrarium. She started to feel watched, constantly. She'd be reading on the deck and get that prickly sensation on her skin. And she'd look up just in time to see a faint movement in one of the dark windows of Mr. Abernathy's house across the way. The curtain would just twitch, but it was enough. One afternoon, she was sunbathing by the pool, music playing softly from her phone. She dozed off for a few minutes in the warm sun. When she woke up, a shadow having fallen across her face, there was a single, perfect, long-stemmed white rose lying on the lounge chair beside her, a few dewy drops of water still on its petals, as if it had just been cut. It hadn't been there before she closed her eyes. There was no note this time, just the rose. It was a beautiful gesture on the surface, but in the context of his escalating attention, it felt deeply, deeply unsettling. It felt like an intrusion, a silent, bold statement. A sign that he had been on her property, very close to her, while she was asleep, vulnerable and completely unaware. She started keeping the heavy glass doors locked at all times, even when she was just by the pool a few feet away. She'd draw the expensive remote-controlled blinds at night, feeling like a prisoner in her luxurious glass cage. She told her parents about it on the phone, trying to make it sound like a funny anecdote about a quirky neighbor. But she could tell they thought she was being a bit dramatic. Honey, he sounds like a lonely old man who's just trying to be neighborly. Her mom had said, her voice full of placating calm. And he brought you a rose? That's so sweet. Don't be rude to him now. The offense was this creeping, insidious, psychological boundary pushing. It wasn't a crime you could easily report to the police. My neighbor is too friendly and left me a flower. They would laugh at her, tell her she was wasting their time. But it was a constant, low-level terror, a feeling of being targeted, of her solitude being systematically, relentlessly invaded and turned against her. The final straw came one evening. She was in the state-of-the-art kitchen, making dinner, looking out the large picture window into the darkening wooded yard. She saw Mr. Abernathy standing at the edge of his own property by the tree line, just watching her house as he often did. But this time was different. As she watched, he slowly raised a pair of powerful binoculars to his eyes, aiming them not at the woods to look for birds, not at the sky, but directly, unwaveringly, at her kitchen window, at her. Chloe dropped to the floor, her heart hammering, her breath catching in her throat, out of his line of sight. He knew she was there. He wasn't just being neighborly. This was active, undeniable surveillance. This was predatory. She spent the rest of the night huddled in an interior windowless bathroom, away from all the glass walls. Her phone clutched in her hand, debating whether to call the police. But what would she say? That her neighbor was birdwatching in her direction. It felt so flimsy, so circumstantial, yet so absolutely terrifying. The next morning, after a sleepless night, she found a plain white envelope on her front doorstep. Inside, there was no note, just a single, high-quality, glossy photograph. Clearly taken with a powerful zoom lens of her, asleep on the lounge chair by the pool, from the day she'd found the rose. He had captured her at her most vulnerable, and was now showing her the proof. She didn't hesitate this time. She packed her bags in a frantic haze, called the homeowners in Europe on their emergency contact number, and told them, her voice shaking, that she was leaving immediately due to a family emergency, and that she was deeply, deeply uncomfortable and frightened by the neighbor's behavior. Then she called the local police and told them everything from the very beginning. The persistent questions, the feeling of being watched, the rose, the binoculars, and finally the photograph. The photo was the proof she needed. The tangible evidence that crossed the line from creepy and eccentric to undeniably criminal. The police investigation, she learned later, revealed that Mr. Abernathy had a sealed juvenile record for similar behavior and several more recent. Informal complaints from other neighbors and previous house sitters that had never gone anywhere for lack of concrete proof. He was a wealthy, well-connected man who people in the community simply dismissed as a bit eccentric or lonely. But this time, with the photograph, they had what they needed to take action. Chloe left that job, her dream summer of luxury, cut short by a quiet, persistent, and very real dread. It taught her a chilling lesson. Sometimes the most terrifying threats don't come with a weapon or a shout, but with a gentle smile, a basket of vegetables, and a pair of binoculars. And that feeling of being watched, especially when no one else believes you, is a horror story all on its own. A silent violation that can make you feel more alone than any empty house ever could. Last summer, my two best buds, Liam and Kevin, and we decided to do the classic American rite of passage, the cross-country road trip. We bought this beat up, barely held together old van we nicknamed the Vandal, loaded it with cheap camping gear, a cooler full of even cheaper beer, and set off from our home in Ohio, heading west with no real plan, just a crumpled paper map and a powerful desire for adventure. It was amazing for the first couple of weeks. A blur of national parks, bad roadside coffee, and the freedom of the open road. Then, somewhere in that vast, empty, sun-baked stretch of Nevada, where the desert heat makes the highway shimmer like water and towns are few and very, very far between, things took a sharp turn into weirdness. We were getting dangerously low on gas, the needle firmly in the red, and a bit of panic was starting to set in. Then we saw it. A faded, hand-painted sign on the side of the road, looking like it had been there since the 1950s. The Oasis, gas, food, oddities, next exit. Underneath, someone had scrawled almost as an afterthought, "See the marvel." Intrigued and frankly, desperate for fuel, we took the exit ramp onto a dusty, cracked asphalt road. The Oasis wasn't much. A dusty, run-down gas station with a single ancient, rusty pump, and a small greasy spoon diner attached, its windows clouded with years of grime. The oddities part seemed to be a sad collection of rusty old mining equipment and sun-bleached animal skulls arranged artfully out front. The whole place was run by an old man named Silas, a skinny, leather-faced desert rat with eyes that were a little too bright, a little too watchful, and a smile that didn't quite have enough teeth. "Fill up?" he asked, his voice raspy, like dry leaves skittering on pavement. While I started the slow process of filling the tank, Liam and Kevin went inside the diner to check out the oddities. When I went in to pay, the place was empty except for Silas and my friends, who were looking at a dusty glass counter filled with weird, desiccated-looking artifacts, petrified scorpions, strange-looking rocks, an old tarnished sheriff's badge. "That carburetor is sounding a little rough on your van there," Silas said, wiping his greasy hands on an even greasier rag as he took my cash. "I could take a look at it for you. Wouldn't want you breaking down out there in the heat. There ain't nothing for 100 miles, in either direction." I was about to say no thanks, that it always sounded like that. But just then, as if on cue, our van, which had been running perfectly fine just minutes before, let out a loud, sputtering, backfiring sound from the parking lot and then died with a final, pathetic wheeze. A coincidence? Or had Silas done something to it, quick as a flash while I was inside paying? It was too perfect, too on the nose. "See?" Silas said with that thin, unsettling smile. "Told you so. Looks like you boys are staying the night. Lucky for you, I got a couple rooms I rent out back." His hospitality felt less like kindness and more like a spider casually inviting a fly into its parlor. The stories you sometimes hear from other travelers, the ones about these remote desert places, about tourists whose cars mysteriously break down, about people who check in and never check out, suddenly felt very, very real. We were trapped. No cell service, a dead van, and Silas, our only hope for a repair, was also the immediate source of our growing dread. He insisted we join him for dinner, a watery, unidentifiable stew he served up with stale crackers in the empty, silent diner. He told us strange, rambling, disjointed stories about the marvel he kept in a padlocked shed, out back, something he said people came from all over the world to see, though we were clearly the only potential customers for miles around. He kept asking us questions about our trip, where we were from, if anyone, our families, was expecting us at a certain time. It felt less like friendly curiosity and more like he was assessing our level of isolation how much we'd be missed if we were gone. The offense wasn't a direct threat, not yet. It was a creeping, insidious sense of being manipulated, of being caught in a carefully laid, well-practiced trap. To make matters worse, Liam, my friend, started to feel really unwell after dinner, complaining of dizziness and nausea. Had something been in the stew? Drugged, maybe, to make us more compliant? We made our excuses, saying Liam needed to lie down, and went to our room, a grimy, Spartan little space with 2 sagging, musty-smelling beds. We immediately barricaded the flimsy door with the 1 rickety chair in the room. Through the thin walls, we could hear Silas moving around outside for hours, the soft, deliberate crunch of his boots on the gravel. A quiet, tuneless, almost mournful whistling that seemed to circle our room, getting closer, bend further away, a sound that made our skin crawl. We decided we had to get out of there. Van or no van, we had to try. At around 3 a.m., when all had finally gone quiet, we slipped out the rickety window of our room, which thankfully didn't squeak too much. We crept over to our van, every shadow looking like a threat. I'm no mechanic, but I know my way around a basic engine from keeping our old clunker running. I popped the hood. Just as I suspected, the distributor cap had been loosened and slightly misaligned. Just enough to make the engine die after running for a minute, but not enough to be immediately obvious as a major failure. Someone had deliberately, expertly disabled our vehicle. As I was tightening it, a bright, blinding light suddenly flooded us. It was Silas standing on the porch of the diner, holding a powerful, industrial-sized spotlight. But even so soon, boys? He called out, his voice no longer folksy or friendly, but cold and hard as the desert rock. You haven't even had the pleasure of seeing the marvel yet. We didn't wait to find out what the marvel was. I slammed the hood shut. We all jumped in the van and prayed to every god I could think of that it would start. It did, roaring to life with a defiant shudder. We sped out of that dusty, forgotten parking lot, tires spitting gravel. Not looking back, Silas's strange, high-pitched, almost inhuman laughter echoing behind us in the vast, empty desert night. We drove nonstop, fueled by adrenaline and fear, until we hit the bright, gaudy lights of Reno. When we told a police officer at a gas station what had happened, he just shook his head with a weary sigh. Lots of weird old coots out in the desert, kids. He probably just wanted some company and got a bit strange when you tried to leave. You were lucky he didn't try to charge you for that repair. No one believed the deliberateness of it all. The perfectly timed sign, the disabled van, the creepy vibe, the subtle drugging of our friend. But we knew we hadn't just found a quirky roadside gas station. We'd found a predator's web, and we had narrowly, miraculously escaped. We never found out what his endgame was, to rob us, to hold us there for some bizarre, lonely reason, or something far worse. But it taught me that sometimes the most dangerous, most terrifying places aren't the big, bustling cities, but the lonely, forgotten, quiet spots on the map where one man makes all the rules and you're just another oddity in his disturbing collection. And some marvels are best left unseen. A friend of mine from college, a woman named Jenna, worked a summer job for a couple of seasons as a historical walking tour guide in one of those old, atmospheric southern cities like Charleston, South Carolina. You know, like a kind of place, lots of charming cobblestone streets, old, spooky cemeteries, and beautiful antebellum houses with dark, complicated histories. Her particular tour focused on the city's more unsettled tales, stories of pirates, lost love, betrayal, and tragedy. It was mostly well-researched historical fact, but she definitely played up the spooky, atmospheric angle for the tourists, which they loved. She had this one guy who started showing up for her 9 p.m. Ghost to the Harbor tour. It was her last tour of the night, and often had the smallest but most dedicated and sometimes weirdest crowd. He appeared for the first time on a Tuesday night. He was tall, thin, and dressed in a slightly old-fashioned, but very well-kept, dark suit, even on the hot, humid Charleston nights when everyone else was in shorts. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that, combined with the dim, flickering gas street lamps, always kept his face in deep, impenetrable shadow. He paid in cash, never spoke to the other guests, and always stood at the very back of the small tour group, just listening, watching. Jenna, being a good, engaging tour guide, tried to draw him in. "Any questions, sir?" He'd just give a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Are you enjoying the tour so far?" A slow, deliberate, almost lazy nod. That was it. No words. The first time, she just figured he was a shy tourist, or maybe a serious history buff who just wanted to listen and absorb the atmosphere without any idle chatter. But then he was there again on Wednesday night and Thursday. Same tour, same time, same dark suit, same hat casting his face in shadow, same spot at the back of the group, same unnerving, absolute silence. By the second week, when he'd been on her tour for 8 nights in a row, paying in cash each time, Jenna was starting to get seriously creeped out. This wasn't a normal tourist with an unusual level of interest. This was something else. He wasn't just interested in the history anymore, she felt. He seemed to be interested in her. His unseen eyes, she felt with a growing certainty, were always fixed on her, on her movements, her gestures, not on the historic buildings or the spooky cemeteries she was pointing out. She started to feel like she was being stalked, but in the most bizarre, public, yet intensely private way imaginable. He was a paying customer on a public tour. He wasn't doing anything overtly illegal. He wasn't threatening her, wasn't getting too close. He was just there. Every single night. A silent, constant, unsettling, shadowy presence. The offense here was this brilliant, insidious psychological game. He was making his presence known, making her know she was being watched, being singled out, but doing it in a way that gave her absolutely no legitimate grounds to complain. If she went to her boss or to the police, what would she possibly say? "This man keeps paying $20 to take my tour every single night, and it's freaking me out." They'd think she was crazy or arrogant for assuming he was there for her. She started to dread her 9 p.m. tour, the one she used to enjoy the most for its spooky atmosphere. Her performance, usually so lively and engaging, became stilted, nervous. She'd find herself stumbling over her words, her eyes constantly, compulsively darting to the tall, silent, shadowy figure at the back of her small group. Her friends, when she told them, tried to be supportive, but didn't quite get it. "Jenna, he's a paying customer. Maybe he just really, really, really likes your tour. Or maybe he has a massive, crippling crush on you and is just incredibly awkward and shy. Just ignore him. He'll get bored eventually." But she couldn't ignore him. His silent presence was a weight, a silent, unspoken threat. She started to notice other, even smaller, creepier things. He seemed to know her route perfectly, sometimes appearing at the next stop on the tour just moments before the group arrived, as if he'd taken some unseen shortcut through the dark, winding alleys of the old city. Sometimes she thought she saw him during the day, a distant figure in a similar hat and dark suit, watching her from across a busy square, as she had lunch, a figure who would melt into the crowd if she tried to get a better look. One night, after the tour, as the last of the other tourists dispersed into the warm, humid night, he didn't leave. He just stood there under a flickering gas lamp at the final stop of door. In front of an old, supposedly haunted cemetery, waiting, just waiting, Jenna's heart was pounding in her chest. Was this it? Was he finally going to speak, to do something, to reveal his purpose? She started to walk quickly away, down a side street, her shoes clattering loudly on the cobblestones. His footsteps followed, calm, unhurried, but keeping a perfect, steady pace with hers. She didn't dare look back. She ducked into a busy, well-lit bar full of noisy tourists, her hands shaking, and waited, watching the street through the window. A few minutes later, she saw him walk slowly past, his face still in deep shadow from his hat, not even glancing in her direction, before he disappeared into the Charleston night. She never knew for sure what would have happened if she hadn't gone into that bar. But she knew this was a deliberate, calculated act of intimidation. The next night, he wasn't there. Or the next. After a full week of his absence, she started to think, to hope, that she had finally scared him off, that it was over. Then, at the end of her tour on Friday night, as she was saying her goodbyes to the group, she saw it, tucked carefully under the windshield wiper of her car, which she'd parked a block away, was a single, perfect, but completely black rose. No note, just the rose. A dark, velvety, almost unnatural-looking thing. She never saw the silent man in the dark suit again. But she quit her job as a tour guide at the end of that summer. The joy, the fun had been completely stolen from it, replaced by a lingering cold fear. No one ever really understood why she was so terrified. So, a guy had a weird, silent crush on you and left you a flower? It's creepy, sure, but was it really that bad? They didn't understand the profound psychological pressure of being silently, relentlessly watched, of being the target of a quiet, patient, and deeply unsettling obsession, an obsession you can't prove but can feel in every fiber of your being. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the most effective, most terrifying stalkers don't need threats or violence. They just need to be there, silently, a constant presence in the background of your life, until your own mind starts to do their work for them, filling in the terrifying blanks. And a single black rose can be more menacing than any shadowed threat.